Hello everyone, welcome to How to HR episode number 14. How are you? I've just got off a lengthy Q&A session with our members inside Your People Powered Business. So if I'm a little tongue-tied, it's because I've been chatting for an hour or so, but hopefully I'll recover and I'll be all good in just a moment. I hope you're having a fabulous week, whatever you are up to. We've had a cold snap here where I am. I don't like it. I much prefer the summer weather, so I'm freezing at the moment, but I hope you've all had a great week. I know it's really busy for many of you in business. Lots of recruitment projects happening, lots of industries and businesses hiring at the moment, and that's great. It's great to see that positive activity in the marketplace. I know it can be a bit of a stressful time for you if you're in that situation right now, but just bear in mind there's a few key things you want to do. You want to make sure you're making sure there's values fit. You're wanting to make sure that you really understand the applicants fully, doing all your background checks and onboard well, because you only get that one chance to make a great first impression with your new employees, and that onboarding, the first day, the first week, the first month, so critical to making sure that person's settled in and ready to go with your business. So it's really great to see all that positive activity in the market across many industries and across everywhere in Australia. So super exciting times at the moment. Now, we're back for this week's episode of How to HR. If you haven't joined us before, hello, I'm Kristy-Lee. I'm the founder and director of the Footprint Group, the host of the People Powered Business podcast, and founder and director of Your People Powered Business, our HR membership for business owners, leaders, and managers. And every week here on Facebook and in YouTube, we have a live video series, How to HR, every single Thursday, where I share with you one really practical, simple to implement piece of advice or guidance or insight into hiring, managing, building, leveraging your teams within your business. Because I truly believe that you can't have a business that delivers you success by however you measure that, as well as any sense of freedom. Because, hey, who got into business to work 80 hours a week? Not me. But you can't have both of those things unless you have a team, and not just any team, an amazing team, the right team for your business. It's about having the right people in the right roles at the right time. So How to HR is all about giving you quick snippets of advice and guidance that you can set you on your way to making sure you are creating that amazing team for your business. This is episode number 14, and today we are chatting about understanding introverts and extroverts and why that's important for our business. Now, many of you know I'm from a psych background. I majored in psych at uni, and I'm very fascinated by human behavior and psychology. And this is partly my interest in this area, but I have seen so many times the fact that when you don't really understand your people and you don't understand fundamentally their personality styles, their personality traits, it's really hard to get the most out of them, to put them in situations and roles and projects where they're going to flourish, and to avoid putting them in situations and roles and projects where they are going to really struggle. And the introvert-extrovert spectrum, and I'm going to refer to it as that because it's not black and white, and in fact, right in the middle, we've got our ambiverts, but it's kind of the fundamental thing that if we can understand even just this without any, further understanding about our employees' personalities, this really, really helps to setting things up for success in making sure the people we're putting into roles and projects and within teams we're setting them up for success, because there is nothing worse than putting an introvert into a situation that's going to want to make them shrink up into a ball and cry, and likewise for an extrovert. We can get the most out of our people if we play to their strengths, and understanding their personality is fundamental to that. So today I really want to unpack with you what on earth is an extrovert, what on earth is an introvert, where the people in between sit, and why it's important, how you can get the most out of people by really understanding this for your team. It's also great to understand this for yourself too. You've probably done some personality profiling or psychometric assessments throughout your time in business or in your career. And I always find it fascinating that when you do those tests properly, and by that it usually means just being blanket honest with your responses, it's a no-brainer. It's like, oh yeah, that is like me. And just even understanding ourselves can help us be better leaders and managers. So this is going to help you understand yourself, but also understand the key members of your team. So to, I guess, backtrack a little bit, the term introvert and extrovert, now these terms have been around a long, long time. In fact, they were initially coined by Carl Jung back in the 1920s when he was looking really about how people express energy, whether they're outward energy givers or inward energy people, and the internal and external factors that cause people to react in different ways and act in different ways. And so he coined these terms, introvert and extrovert. Now, of course, over the years since then, we've learned a lot more and we've really redefined what is an introvert, what is an extrovert. There's, in fact, different pools of thought and research that show us different types of introverts and different types of extroverts. If you've ever done a Myers-Briggs assessment, you're either an I or an E, so you'll know, excuse me, and it's just really fascinating. And importantly, there is no good or bad, there is no right or wrong. One is not better than the other, and in fact, I think every team needs both. If you've got a team stacked with extroverts, you may be missing detail. If you've got a team stacked with introverts, you may be missing opportunity. So there is absolutely no good or bad, no right or wrong. And in fact, I encourage you to have a mix of people on your team that are both introverts and extroverts. So let's unpack it. Introverts. Let's talk about introverts first, because we always start with extroverts. In fact, society favors extroverts. Through school, we're applauded if we comfortably get up and speak in public and raise our hand for, school captain, or put ourselves out there. As a society, we tend to favour extroverts. So I'm going to start with introverts today. So how do we know if we've got an introvert on our team? What are the characteristics that we're looking for when we're assessing who might be an introvert? Our introverts gain energy from being by themselves and spending some time really not only alone but within their own thoughts. That's how they relax and recharge. Now, that is not to say that introverts can't be social or don't enjoy activities where they are participating as part of a group, but it's not how they gain their energy. So an introvert will certainly be able to do a presentation potentially, but they'll need time to recharge after that. So they gain their energy from being by themselves. So they need that time to recharge and be alone. They tend, not always, but they tend to be quieter, and they will typically observe before acting. So they'll watch something play out before they'll make a comment or take action or give their opinion or give their thought. In terms of that then, what are their strengths? The introverts on your team are excellent observers. They will see things that are going on that other people, particularly extroverts, might miss, because they're looking at what's going on and they're seeing patterns and they're seeing how things are working together. Very good with detail, your introverts. Interestingly, introverts are less likely to need that external reinforcement. They're less likely to need to be told every 5 minutes that they're doing a good job, where your extroverts are going to need that from you. So your introverts are less likely. They don't need that external reinforcement because they get that from within themselves, that sense of satisfaction that they've got the job done well. So they feel like that sense of satisfaction from getting a task complete or reaching a project milestone, meeting a deadline. So they're typically self-starters, which is, we all want self-starters on our team. They are more risk adverse. And now I'm not saying that introverts don't take any risk and that extroverts take all the risks, but introverts are a little bit more risk adverse and they'll really weigh things up before reaching and taking a risk on something. But they do process details quickly. So this doesn't mean they'll sit on things for a long time necessarily. They will really process things through, follow their own ideas, and tend to be more independent thinkers because they don't require that outside or external input in order to make their own decisions. So they're able to make much more independent decisions, which can be very handy because you don't necessarily want someone that always wants to make decisions by committee, depending on their role. I guess in terms of, I don't want to say weaknesses, but the challenges you might come to with introverts is they're going to be less likely to come to you to seek input or advice or help. because they're so independent in their thinking. They won't raise their hand as readily as an extrovert to say, I'm stuck, I need help, I don't know what to do, or even to say, I've got an idea necessarily. So, you know, in a team meeting or in a staff meeting, they won't speak up as readily, even if they have something really valuable to contribute. If you ask them to contribute, they will, but they won't speak up as readily. So how do you get the most out of your introverts? You need to actually seek out their opinion. They won't always give it to you, but if you ask for it, they will respond. If you can set them in scenarios where you're getting that information more in a one-on-one setting than in a one-to-many setting, they will be much more comfortable opening up about that in that environment. They find the one-to-many settings a bit more challenging quite often, and particularly if what they're going to say has risk associated with it. Maybe not everyone's going to love what they have to say. Maybe they're unsure if it's correct. That you're going to get a lot more honest and transparent communication from them in a one-on-one setting compared to a one-to-many setting. It can also be a great idea to team them up with an extrovert. So in a project team, to have a mix of introverts and extroverts can be really, really handy, because the introverts will see the detail, they'll observe and see things, the extroverts will talk and take the action. So it can be really good to have a mixture of them in the team. So when you're looking at your team, you're thinking, have I got an introvert here? Watch for how they recharge their energy. If they've just had a really bustling team meeting, are they going to sit by themselves quietly now to recharge? Are they happy to respond if you ask them a question, but less likely to share their opinion otherwise? Are they good observers? Do they have really strong attention to detail? They are your introverts in your team. Now, on the flip side of the coin, we have our extroverts. And as I said, society tends to favour them. Our extroverts tend to be much more outgoing. They love to talk things through. They don't like to work through things in their head. You will notice the difference between an introvert and an extrovert, because an introvert likes to work quietly. An extrovert likes to talk every concept that comes through their head through. Now, this is where you can see your introverts and your extroverts in the workplace tend to butt heads and frustrate each other. And it's not because they don't like each other, it's because they don't understand one another. I'll give you a really personal example. This is a bit funny. I am an ambivert. That's how I consider myself, but I definitely have introvert characteristics. And one is when I'm working on a project, particularly if it's a detailed research or piece of advice for a client, I need quiet to concentrate. I don't do well with a lot of chatter and distractions. So I'll put my headphones in. Now, if I'm working nearby to my husband who has his own business, he's an extrovert and he likes to talk through every idea that comes into his head. He finds it extraordinarily frustrating when I have my headphones in and aren't available to do that with him. And I find it extraordinarily frustrating when he wants to talk through everything. So it can really cause people in your team to get frustrated with one another. But it's important that you help them understand one another and be able to find ways for the extrovert to be able to talk and the introvert to be able to have their quiet time. So extroverts they grab their energy from being outward with people. If they have to work on something that's quiet and concentrating, they need to recharge their energy by being social and chatting to people. So they can work on quiet, strategic, detailed projects, but then you'll find them in the lunchroom chatting to everyone they can find just to recharge, because that's how they need to get their energy back. So typically extroverts are better in social situations. They will love the networking events. They really enjoy that outward interaction. It's how they get their energy. They are typically more confident public speakers. Now, that's not to say they are better public speakers. In fact, many entrepreneurs I know, probably the majority, are exceptional public speakers but are introverts. So they can get there, they can do that, but then they need to go and recharge with some quiet time. Extroverts are very confident speaking publicly, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're excellent at it, but they're quite happy to do it, definitely. So an extrovert's strengths are they're going to communicate really well. You're always going to know where you stand with an extrovert, and they're really good at forming relationships with others very, very quickly. So many years ago when I had my large consulting business and I had a huge team of consultants, as I said, I'm an ambivert with very much introvert characteristics on some particular areas. So I had consultants working for me who were extroverts. And they were fabulous at attending the networking events, building relationships really, really quickly. And they loved those things. If I asked them to sit in their office and work on a detailed document for 2 hours, they would rather stick a needle in their eye, to be honest. So having that mix is really, really important. And then to really help balance it out, you team up your introverts and your extroverts. So you send your introverts off to the function or networking event with an extrovert. So they feel comfortable in the social setting because they've got some protection with their extrovert friend with them, and the extrovert will lead the conversations and connect the people. So they're very, very strong, and it's really important to have them in your team in that space. They tend to be more sociable, charismatic kind of characters. If you've got an extrovert on your team, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the flip side, and again, I don't want to use the word weakness, but the challenges for the extroverts is they're going to find it harder to make more analytical decisions. The attention to detail is not typically their default. Not that they can't do it, but it won't be where they will naturally sway towards. And they really also struggle with making decisions that need to be quite emotionless. So again, that example of my consultants that I was sharing with you, one consultant who was so good at meeting clients, doing the networking events. She built relationships brilliantly quickly with people. But if she had to make a decision that had to be quite factual and emotionless and in fact might hurt someone's feelings, that was, I made those decisions for her because it was just too hard for her and she hated it. So she would much rather say, I need you to get that done, and I could do that. And that's how we sort of gelled and worked together in that sense. So the other thing with the extroverts too is they are far less independent in their thinking and making decisions. They're going to want to seek input, and they're going to talk through their ideas and get help from others around them. So they're not so great with that sort of independent thinking and analysis. And again, in terms of getting the most out of them, if you want someone to speak up at a team meeting and give their opinion, ask an extrovert. If you want someone to go out and build relationships in a social setting, get your extrovert out there. So it's really understanding where to sit these people within your business. And as I said, you want to have a mix of both. So when you're thinking about who are extroverts on your team, who is speaking up all the time, who is willing to share their opinion, who talks through things openly, who is your social superstar of your team, that's your extroverts. Now, your extroverts can be a bit challenging to sometimes wrangle in and manage, particularly those very high on the extrovert scale. They're going to need constant reassurance and praise. They really like to hear that feedback as to how they're going and that they're doing a good job. They need that external input. It's really important to them. Now, this can be tricky from a management perspective because you've got employees that don't need that, and then other employees that do. And it's the tricky part is balancing to make sure you're giving credit where it's due, not only because an extrovert needs it. And that might be one-on-one with the introvert saying, hey, I'm really appreciating what a good job you're doing. Where publicly in the team meeting with the extrovert saying, wow, what an amazing job you did with that. So it's finding that balance. I wanted to share this with you today because understanding these two primary personality characteristics can really help you when you're building project teams, when you're understanding who you need to bring into a role, whether you're looking for an introvert or an extrovert, and even helping to understand why you might have a little bit of problem or conflict in the team if you've got introverts and extroverts working together and you're wondering why they just seem to be the butting heads, perhaps not getting along, or just it's purely that they're not understanding each other. So if you can share this with them, you're going to be able to find better ways for them to work together. And it may be simply a matter of saying, this is how you work, this is how they work. Let's find a way for you two to communicate and understand each other better, because that's going to really build much more engagement in your team. You're going to get far more productivity. When you've got people working on projects together, they're going to get it done better and faster than if you left that alone. It's also going to make sure you're building the right mix of teams for particular projects. So I hope that's helped to really just help you understand the difference between your introverts and your extroverts on your team. And again, it's a scale. You'll have some extroverts that are like off the charts and some that are closer into being, midway. And same with your introverts. You're going to have some super quiet introverts and then some introverts that do okay in social settings but largely need that recharge from that quiet time. And just understanding who your people are, where they sit on this scale, is going to really help you to make sure you're building the right mix in your team, you're putting the right people on the right projects and the right tasks, and that you're setting yourself and your team up for success. I hope that's been useful. Thank you so much for joining me here on How to HR today. And I look forward to seeing you next week for episode number 15. Take care.